My name is Rebecca Lawson. I am 34 years old. And for 5 years, I believed a lie that was told to me so consistently and so quietly that I eventually stopped being able to hear it as a lie at all. The lie was this, that I was nothing without him. His name was Craig. He said it in different ways at different times. Sometimes directly, "You would have nothing if it weren't for me." Sometimes sideways, "I just don't think you're cut out for that, babe." Sometimes gently, which was the worst version, "I worry about you. I just don't think you understand how hard it is out there." Always with a tone that said the concern was love, that the ceiling he was building above my head was for my own protection. I believed him. For 5 years, I believed him. I stayed silent when I should have spoken. I made myself small in rooms where I could have filled them. I passed on opportunities and talked myself out of ambitions and deferred, again and again, to the version of myself that Craig had decided I was. And then one morning I woke up and made a decision so quietly and so completely that I surprised even myself. I packed a bag. I walked out of the house we shared in Denver, Colorado. I got into my car. Craig was standing on the front steps watching me go. And he laughed. Not cruelly, almost cheerfully, with the confidence of a man who already knew the ending of the story. "You won't last a month," he said. I said nothing. I just kept walking. 2 years later, his assistant called my office. Craig wanted a meeting. He had a business proposal he believed I would find valuable. He was told he could come in on a Thursday at 2 o'clock and that Ms. Lawson would have 30 minutes available. He walked through that door on a Thursday afternoon and looked at the name on the wall behind my desk. His face went completely still. And for the first time in 5 years, Craig had absolutely nothing to say. But before I tell you what actually happened, please like and subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Now, let's begin. I need to tell you who I was before Craig, because it matters. I grew up in Fort Collins, Colorado, the daughter of 2 teachers who believed deeply in the power of a woman knowing her own mind. My mother taught high school English for 30 years. My father taught middle school mathematics. They were not wealthy people, but they were certain people, certain about their values, certain about what they were doing and why, and certain, with a consistency that shaped me in ways I am still discovering, that their daughter was capable of anything she set herself toward seriously. I set myself toward business. From the time I was in college at Colorado State, studying marketing and communications, I had a specific picture in my mind of the kind of work I wanted to do. Brand strategy. The architecture of how companies present themselves to the world, how they build identity and trust and recognition over time. I interned at a small agency in Fort Collins my junior year and knew within the first week that this was exactly the right world for me. I graduated and moved to Denver and got an entry-level position at a mid-size branding agency called Summit Creative. I was 22 years old and completely certain of the direction I was walking in. I met Craig 8 months later. Craig Lawson was 31 when I met him. He was a commercial real estate developer, confident, well-dressed, successful in the visible way that certain men in their early 30s are successful. He was interesting to talk to and attentive in the beginning, and he made me feel, in those early months, that he saw something particular and valuable in me. I understand now that what he saw was potential he could manage.
But I did not understand that then.
We dated for a year and got married when I was 24. I was young. My parents were cautiously supportive. They liked Craig well enough and they trusted my judgment, though my mother said once, carefully, that she hoped I would keep my career at the center of my life regardless of what else happened. I told her of course I would. Within a year of the marriage, I had left Summit Creative.
Craig had suggested it.
Not as a demand. He was never crude about it. As a consideration. His real estate business was expanding and he could use someone with a marketing background to handle the brand side of things in-house. The pay would be better. The hours would be more flexible. It made sense, he said, for us as a family unit, even though we didn't have children yet, and the family unit was just the 2 of us. I agreed. I told myself it was a practical decision. I told myself I would do it for a year or 2, and then return to agency work when the timing was right. The timing was never right. Craig made sure of that in the quiet, incremental way he managed most things. The work I did for Craig's business was real work. I built his company's brand from almost nothing, developed the visual identity, the messaging framework, the marketing strategy, the client communication systems. I wrote the content for the website that his clients consistently told him made them trust the company before they ever spoke to a person. I ran campaigns that generated leads his sales team converted into contracts worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Craig acknowledged this in private, occasionally. In public or in conversation with colleagues and clients, the business was always his vision, his execution, his success. My contributions were administrative, background, supportive. When I raised this, gently, and then less gently over the years, Craig had a consistent response. That I didn't understand the business world the way he did. That I was too sensitive. That what I was interpreting as dismissal was simply him protecting me from a high-pressure environment I wasn't suited for. "You are nothing without me," he said once, plainly and without anger, as if it were a fact he was doing me the courtesy of stating clearly.
I don't mean that badly.
"I just need you to understand how things actually work." I went quiet after that. I went quiet for a long time. But something had shifted in the quiet. Something that was the opposite of acceptance. Something that was accumulating, slowly and with great patience, like water against a wall. The morning I left, Craig was in the kitchen making coffee. I came downstairs with the bag I had packed the night before while he slept. I had arranged to stay with my friend Dana while I found an apartment. I had opened a personal bank account the previous week. I had called my mother the night before and she had said, quietly and without drama, "I'll be here when you need me." Craig turned when he heard my bag on the kitchen floor.
He looked at the bag.
He looked at me. Something moved across his face that I had not seen there before. Not quite alarm, but the first suggestion of a reality he hadn't accounted for. "What is this?" he said. "I'm leaving," I said. I expected an argument. I expected negotiation, or anger, or the particular soft devastation that he sometimes deployed when he needed me to change course. What I did not expect was what actually happened. He leaned against the kitchen counter. He looked at me for a moment, and then he shook his head slightly, with an expression that was almost pitying, and he said, "You won't last a month." And he laughed. A short, certain laugh. The laugh of a man who had already run the numbers and knew the outcome. I looked at him one last time. I picked up my bag. I walked out the door. The first month was the hardest. I will not pretend otherwise. I was 30 years old, moving into a one-bedroom apartment in Denver's Capitol Hill neighborhood with furniture I had assembled from secondhand stores and one good lamp my mother had sent from Fort Collins. I had savings, not a great deal, because Craig had managed our finances and my access to them had been more limited than I had ever examined carefully enough. I had a small amount of freelance work I had begun quietly building in the months before I left, a few small clients who needed brand strategy help and who had come to me through my professional network. I had my skills. 5 years of doing the real work behind Craig's business had made me exceptionally good at what I did, even if only I and a handful of clients knew it. I worked with the particular focused energy of a person who has been told what they cannot do and has decided to make that the least interesting thing anyone has ever said to them. Within 3 months, I had 6 freelance clients. Within 6 months, I had 12. Within a year, I had enough stable recurring work and enough of a professional reputation, built on results, on referrals, on the work speaking for itself, to make a decision I had been considering since my second month in the Capitol Hill apartment. I incorporated Lawson Brand Strategy, LLC. My name on the wall. My name on the letterhead. My name on the door of a small but real office space in Denver's Rhino District that I signed a lease on 14 months after walking out of Craig's kitchen with a bag and nothing guaranteed. I hired 2 people, then a third, then a fourth. The clients came because the work was good. The work was good because it had always been good. The only thing that had changed was who got the credit. His assistant called on a Tuesday. A woman named Nicole, professional and efficient, calling on behalf of Craig Lawson of Lawson Commercial Properties. He was exploring a brand refresh, she said, and had been referred to Lawson Brand Strategy by a mutual contact. Could Ms. Lawson accommodate a Thursday at 2? I sat with the phone in my hand for a moment. Then I told Nicole that Thursday at 2 would work fine. I did not tell Nicole that Ms. Lawson and Mr. Lawson had once shared a last name in a different context. I did not call Craig back to alert him. I simply confirmed the appointment and went back to work. On Thursday at 2, I was at my desk when my assistant Marcus knocked and said my 2 o'clock had arrived.
I told him to send them in.
Craig walked through the door of my office ahead of his colleague, the way Craig always entered rooms. First, with the unconscious ease of a man accustomed to being the most significant person present. He was wearing a suit I recognized. He had his phone in one hand and a leather portfolio under his arm. He was talking to his colleague over his shoulder as he came through the door, finishing a sentence, the way people finish sentences when they are not yet paying full attention to the room they are entering. Then he turned and saw the desk, and the wall behind it, and my name on the wall behind it, in the brushed steel lettering that my graphic designer had installed 3 months earlier. Lawson Brand Strategy. He stopped. His colleague took one more step, and then stopped too, confused by the sudden stillness. Craig's face went completely still. Not blank, there was a great deal moving behind it. I could see the recalibration happening in real time, the rapid and uncomfortable reassembly of a narrative that had just encountered a fact it hadn't accounted for. I stood up. "Craig," I said. "Come in. Have a seat." He sat. His colleague sat beside him. I sat across from them both. He looked at me for a long moment. His mouth opened slightly. Then it closed. For the first time in all the years I had known him, Craig Lawson had nothing to say. I let the silence sit for exactly as long as it needed to. Then I opened the folder on my desk and said, in my most professional voice, "Tell me about the brand refresh you're considering. Let's see if we're the right fit." We were not the right fit. I knew that before the meeting began, and I expect Craig knew it by the end. We shook hands at the door, and his colleagues said they would be in touch, and I said of course, and Marcus showed them out. I went back to my desk. I sat in my chair. Outside my window, the Rhino neighborhood was doing what it did on Thursday afternoons, busy and real, and completely indifferent to the small private history that had just walked through my door and walked back out. I thought about the morning I left. The bag on the kitchen floor. The short, certain laugh. The 4 words that were meant to be the last word on the subject of what I was capable of. You won't last a month. 26 months. 4 employees. 12 active clients. My name on the wall. My mother called that evening, the way she sometimes did on Thursdays. I told her what had happened. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, in the voice she used when she wanted something to land properly, "You never needed him to know what you were worth. You just needed to remember it yourself." She was right. She had been right for a long time. I just needed the room and the wall and the name on it to finally prove it.